Today I am throwing down the gauntlet and hunting down the perfect beginner watercolor set. Hi artists and artists-to-be. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Margot and I'm a pro artist. I've been thinking a lot about art supplies lately, and especially, I've been getting a lot of questions from beginner artists and beginner watercolorists wanting to find the perfect beginner set and asking me what colors should I buy, what should I invest in, what's important, what's not important. And as a pro artist who sometimes has a really hard time navigating shopping for supplies myself, because there's so many options out there and everything is very expensive. Art supplies do not come cheap these days. I really wanted to answer this question and find the perfect beginner watercolor supply list. And here's the catch. There are two things that it must be. Number one, they have to be of professional grade quality. And anybody who's been watching this channel for a while knows that I am really adamant about always getting professional quality materials. And number two, and this is going to be the hardest part, everything has to fall under $100 US. So this is going to be quite an undertaking, and I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to achieve it. I might go over, but I really want to come into this with the idea that we're going to get everything that we need and what's important for under $100, because the last thing I want is for somebody to start their watercolor journey, spend a ton of money on the wrong things, or, worst of all, quit because you're not buying the right materials that are really going to set the foundation for success. And I myself was in that position many, many years ago when I started watercoloring. And I nearly quit because I was like, this is so hard, this is so annoying. And yes, it is hard, it can be hard, but it doesn't have to be joyless. It doesn't have to be a pain. And part of that is picking art materials that are going to make your job a lot easier. So with that said, I have my laptop here and we are going to shop for this set together, because I thought it'd be fun to kind of go on this this Easter egg hunt of trying to find everything we need, and see if I can get it done. So I'm going to visit my favorite online art retailer, which is Blick, and I always go to one of either two places, either Blick or Jackson Art Supplies, and those are the two that I trust the most, and they have the most diverse and most full collection, I guess, of art supplies. So, okay, so let's start with, where do we start? Paints. I think that's the first place to start because that is the most important thing. Two most important things, in my opinion. Number one, paints. Number two, watercolor paper. Those are the two most things that are really make or break. Brushes, you can get by with a lot less. And all the other stuff, the accoutrements, the palettes, all that kind of stuff. You could use dishes, you can use a plastic takeout container. It doesn't matter for your palette, but we'll see what we can get within our budget. So again, it is $100 US. I am not including shipping and I am not including tax on this. So I'm sorry, you guys, you're on your own for tax because it also depends on where you're located. So, if you're on the East Coast, West Coast, depending on what the tax situation is in your state or in your country, obviously. So let's start with watercolors. And so I'm going to go with, I think that for beginners, you should really be starting with the tubes over the pans. First of all, tubes are much more cost effective than the pans. They tend to last longer. So let's go with the tubes. And I'm going to look for the set that I started with, which was Winsor & Newton. So that's the first place I'm going to go because I really trust the quality of their paints. And I'm going to go for Winsor & Newton Professional. We're going to see. We're going to browse and see if I can get a nice set from Winsor & Newton. Travel tin set of 12, $99. Nope, that gives us nothing for anything else. We are probably going to buy the tubes individually so that I can give you my recommendations of the perfect palette that can mix the broadest range of colors. So alizarin crimson, let's see. So on average, a 5ml tube is going to set you back anywhere from $6 to $10, depending on the exact color that you're going with. And the reason why the colors are priced differently is because the price of pigments varies. So some pigments are more expensive than others. And that's why some of these, you might wonder, why is one tube $6 and another tube is $11 or $10? It's because of the price of the raw materials of the pigments. Let's see, if I go with a six color palette, or 6 colors to start with, which is what I recommend, then if we average out at $6 per tube, that's $36 just for the paints alone. which is not bad. I would love to get a set if there's anything available. So if we can't get a set, then we'll buy them individually. Now let's look at my second favorite brand, which is Daniel Smith. I love Daniel Smith. Really good quality, super interesting pigments, and just a joy to work with. Very, very easy to work with, very smooth. They blend with each other with wonderful ease. Ooh, all right, so Daniel Smith has a set of 6. They have an assorted set of 6, and it looks like it's called the Essentials. That sounds good. I like that. So it sounds promising. So we have a set of 6, which is a split primary palette. And I'm going to start a video series very soon, starting at ground zero of watercolor technique and explaining all these things in detail. But for now, I'm just going to tell you, essentially, when you are starting out and you're trying to build a watercolor palette, one of the most popular types of palettes is what's called a split primary color palette. And it gives you 2 versions of every one of the basic primaries. So you have 2 yellows, 2 reds, and 2 blues. And of each of those primaries, you'll have a color that either leans warm or cool. And the idea behind this is that the combination of this color palette will yield, technically, every single possibility of colors in the spectrum. Whether that's completely 100% true or not is kind of the subject of debate within the art community. But for the sake of beginning and getting a really nice, academic, solid workhorse foundation, I think this is a great way to go. And so here we have 2 yellows. We have a cool yellow and a warm yellow. We have a cool red and a warm red, and a cool blue and a warm blue. So this actually sounds perfect. I mean, I don't think I would change anything about this. So that comes in at $37.59, which is great. We have a lot of space left in our budget to get other goodies. So I'm going to add this to my cart. And, I could shop around and just look at every single brand there is out there, because there are a lot. There's Sennelier, there's, we looked at Winsor & Newton, there's Holbein, there's Van Gogh, Core, the list goes on and on. But we're not here to split hairs. I can vouch for Daniel Smith being an incredible quality, finely milled, or a brand with finely milled pigments. And so I would definitely stand behind them, and I think that this is the way to go for your first watercolor set. So now let's move on to item number 2 on the list, which is extremely important as well. And this is another thing that is make or break, which is the quality of your watercolor paper. And so I often get people ask me why is it, I got really great quality paints, they're professional, the pigments are wonderful. Why is it that my paper is doing weird things? Why is it, the colors are sinking into the paper and I'm not getting these beautiful, vibrant colors? Paper is definitely one of those things that you want to get right, because that's really going to make your watercolors sing, because it's all about how the pigments settle and rest on the surface. What I use is a watercolor block, but I find that a lot of people have trouble using that, especially at the beginning, because it involves a little bit of a block is basically where the sheets of paper are all laminated together on the sides, which prevents the paper from buckling when you are painting. But the downside of that is that you have to be a little bit knowledgeable with how to take that off the block. And a lot of novices and beginners don't quite know how to do that, and it's kind of intimidating. So for the sake of this beginner collection, or this beginner set, I'm going to go with a pad of paper, because it's just more user friendly and less likely to just have user error. So let's see, watercolor paper. And my recommendation for watercolor paper would be a cold press paper, because cold press is a lot easier to, again, it's at the end of the day, it's about what's easier to work with. And cold press fights you a lot less than hot press, where you have to baby it a little bit more. You have to be a little bit more on your game and know how to control water and that kind of thing for it to perform for you. Cold press is a lot less finicky. And I have a video all about hot press versus cold press papers, which I'm going to link in the card above. If you're interested in knowing the difference in I could go into details about all these art supplies, but this would make this video 2 hours long. So if you're interested in learning more about the differences in paper and paper quality, then check out the card above and you will be able to learn more about that. So for this block, I am averse to the brand Canson. It's not very nice, but I don't like Canson for their watercolor papers. Strathmore is okay, but my golden standard when it comes to watercolor paper is one of three brands. Either Arches, that is really just the best of the best. Number two is Baohong Academy paper, which is a Chinese brand. They are not available on Blick. If you want to purchase them on Amazon, you can, and I'm going to put a link to their papers in the description below if you want to check that out. But for the sake of this video, I want to get everything in my cart here so we can tally it up and have a little fun doing that. And the third paper that I also recommend is from Legion, and it's a brand called, gosh, why don't I know? I'm going to link it in the card below. I don't remember what it's called. It's called Aqua. Legion Aqua? I think it's Aqua. Okay, well, we're going to put it in the description below, just in case. I don't know. My memory's just gone down the toilet lately. So Arch watercolor block starts at $18.29. That's probably for a block like this big. So I'm going to give you something bigger than that. So let's open up the Arch watercolor blocks. Oh wait, no, I said I wasn't going to do blocks. Axe that. No blocks. Let's see what Arch's watercolor. They have watercolor pads, which I don't think are the same quality as the blocks, but I think they're still going to be quality paper. Each one of these pads of papers is always hand numbered and come in handmade lots. So there's a lot of love and a lot of attention put into the details of this brand. So I really stand behind them 100%. So Arch watercolor pads cold press at a 9x12, which I think is a really good size starting out, is $17.63. Really good price. Let's see what happens if we go up to 10x14. We're still at $21. So, if you want to go a little bit over that $100, and I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to, you could go for the 10x14. But for this video, I'm going to add the 9x12 because that is a really nice, a great starting point for, a watercolorist who's getting started. And you don't want to get overwhelmed with this like ginormous pad and fear of the blank page. So I think 9x12 is a good place to start. Let's add that to cart, and we now have, how much is in our cart? So we're at $55.22, which is great. We are halfway there on our budget. We've already gotten the two most important things. So you see, you can get pro art supplies without breaking the bank. I mean, you're not gonna get like 100 colors for this, and you don't need it. What you need is quality. Quality, quality, quality. All right, so then watercolor brushes. And here's where it starts to get really confusing because when you go watercolor brush shopping, there is going to be a million options. And I often go to this section and I just get like totally overwhelmed. So for this, what I'm going to try to do is, again, try to get you a set instead of individual brushes because especially for brushes, the sets do tend to be priced a little bit more competitively. Typically, these manufacturers will give you a really nice array of workhorse brushes within those collections. There are two brush brands that I stand behind. I buy only these two brands for the most part, and that is either Princeton or Escada. Escada is going to be expensive, and I don't believe that they sell sets, at least not on Blick, they do. So I'm going to go with Princeton, and we're going to try to find a good watercolor brush collection. See, already I'm like looking at this and I'm like, all right, Princeton, watercolor brushes, Princeton. Velvet Touch is a good collection. I love that because the brush bristles are soft and they are snappy. They snap to a point really well, which is what you want especially with watercolor brushes. So I'm going to open, hold on. Princeton Aqua Elite is my favorite, but it's more expensive. So let's open the Princeton Aqua Elite series first, and they do sell sets of these. They look kind of unusual, so let's see what kind of sets they sell. Yeah, they're going to be a lot more expensive. I mean, it's not crazy though. So Blick Exquisite. Blick Exclusive Aqua Elite Series, set of 4. So what comes in here? Oval wash, okay. Dagger, not for most people. Round 4 and round 10. Okay, I would, for beginner brushes, I would recommend 4 types of brush, 4 brushes. 2 rounds, 1 large, 1 small, 1 square or flat brush, and 1 a filbert. So especially if you are interested in doing florals, I think that a filbert is a must-have because it's like the miracle brush for florals. So let's see if any of these sets will give us a filbert, and if not, maybe we can do a set of 3 or 4 and then add a filbert on top so you can get that too. So this set of, so what is it? Round 8, long round 12, mottler 1.5, oval wash 3/4. That's $51. Already that's going to bring us over, and we haven't even gotten a palette yet. So I would say that if you have the budget to go a little bit over, then you might want to try this, this set right here, the mottler oval wash and the 2 rounds for $51. But I'm going to try and see if I can get something from the Velvet Touch collection from Princeton, which is also a terrific collection. Here they do have a set of 4 for anywhere from $20 to $30. Perfect. So what comes in this one? So in the first one, we have a round 1, okay, round 8, okay, angle shader and a spotter, okay. And then the second one, we have a round 4, a long round 8, a shader and a wash. Okay, so so this is $30. This is great. Okay, so I would recommend getting quarter and spotter. All right, so this kind of depends on whether you're going to be painting large things or small things. I would recommend getting started with the $30.79 one, because that's a more universal kind of collection. So let's add this to cart, and it gives us a round number 4, which is great. And the round, what's great about round brushes is that if you get a good quality one, this is actually from another brand, this is Etcher. But if you get a good quality one, when you wet them, they come to a really nice, very fine point. So even if you have a larger brush like a 4 and you don't have a small one like a number 2 or a 0, then you will still be able to get a really fine point and be able to do little details with like a number 4 brush. So I wouldn't concern myself too. I mean, you don't want a number like 18 brush to try to do like tiny details, but I wouldn't concern myself with like a number 4 versus a number 2 so much, especially at this point. So for the sake of this video, we're going to add the $30.79 set to this cart, and I'm going to add a filbert to this too, if you are into florals. So for the filbert, we are going to go with a number, wow, it's expensive. A number 6 is $17. Hold on a second. Oh no, the long handle. All right, so here's another note. When you're shopping for watercolor brushes, you want your handle to be a short handle brush. Those are the types of handles or the types of brushes that are suitable for watercolor painting. Obviously, if you are kind of more experimental and you know your thing, you're in your groove and you want to paint with long handle brushes, do what you're comfortable with. But generally speaking, and I also, not to plug too many videos, I have a video also about the different types of brushes and why use certain brushes for certain purposes and different kind of brush strokes, which I'll link in the description below if you're interested in checking that out. But again, to simplify, generally speaking, for watercolors and for smaller scale artwork, you want a short handle brush. And so we have a short handle filbert brush, number 6 size 1, which is a great size. Or if you want to go a little bit larger, number 8, for anywhere from $6.88 to $7.75. So I'm going to go with a slightly bigger one for $7.75. Add that to cart. Yes. So this is fun, shopping and not having to pay for it yet. So we're at $93. We're still below budget. So I have room in my budget to add a palette if you want to add a palette. Otherwise, great option for getting a palette is go to your local Goodwill, your local thrift store, or even an old plate that you have at home. Ceramic plates make excellent mixing surfaces. The only catch is that once you've used your ceramic plate for mixing colors on it, then do not ever use that for food again, because ceramic or porcelain is porous. So that means that the pigments that are on your brush will end up going into that surface. And if you're eating off that surface and you have pigments, a lot of watercolor paints and materials and pigments can be toxic. So you do not want to consume that by any means. So once you've designated a ceramic plate for, as a palette, then do not eat that off of that again. So if you wanted to check out with this as is and just add your ceramic palette, from your home collection or going to Goodwill, then your shopping spree would be done. But since we have a little bit left, I'm going to see if I can challenge myself and find a palette for under this budget. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would add. If you had a little bit extra that I would also, okay, you know what, I'm gonna get to the extras once we get to the end of this video. So for the palettes, a lot of people love these like daisy dishes. I don't think that those are particularly helpful, especially for beginners, because I don't know, they're just, you know, everything is so compartmentalized and you miss out on the joy of the whole mixing experience, which is part of what makes watercolors and, you know, handling paint so much fun, is like the process of mixing your colors and getting to know that. And that's part of also improving your skills as a watercolorist and your knowledge of color theory, which is another thing that we're going to get to in subsequent videos as we start to build up your technique, which I really, really want to do. All right, so for palettes, I don't think we're going to be able to get a butcher tray or even like a ceramic mixing palette for the budget, but I do think that we're going to be able to get a plastic palette for this price range. And yes, we do have a palette. This is $5.49. Where was I at? Yeah, all right. Oh, I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud of myself. Okay, my husband would be proud too, because he's like a math whiz. He loves adding and like, not adding, he loves adding. He loves, you know, calculating and algebra and that kind of thing. So he'd be proud of me being able to stay within budget for this, which for my own art supplies, I never stay below budget. But for this, I think I am. So the Masters International Folding Watercolor Palette, $5.49. Excellent. So this is all you need, really. It has everything you need. You have all the wells and nice large surfaces for mixing. And this is the kind of palette where you're going to need to prep it before using, because for a lot of plastic palettes, they tend to bead up. So instead of sticking to the surface of the palette, your paints have a tendency of just like rising to the surface and not mixing properly. So I have a video on how to prep your palette. If you're interested and you end up buying this palette, watch that first before, you know, beginning your journey on this palette, because it's going to really help you out. So let's add this to cart, and we are at $99.25. Why am I so excited? Why am I so excited? Okay, this is great. And guess what? We qualified for free shipping. If you want to go a little bit over budget, my recommendation for this would be a tube of permanent white gouache from Holbein's Artists series, and that tube is for $8.28. I think this is a really good one to have in your arsenal, because having some white will allow you to add white after the fact and not have to worry so much about, like, you know, making sure that you're blocking off all of your white sections first. So that would be one thing that I add to the cart. I think that's it. The only other thing that you're going to need is a water receptacle, and that can be anything. And honestly, what I use for my personal collection is jam jars. So jam jars, peanut butter jars, that kind of thing. And it's really great to use jars because they come with a lid. And especially if you're kind of starting and stopping, and if you're busy and you can't always come back and allocate a ton of time to your watercolor process, having a jar and being able to close that, you can just leave it on your desk and not have to worry about like kids or animals or anybody knocking it over or drinking from it, God forbid. And so that is it. We are done with our shopping spree. We got all of our basic essentials for $100 or less. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments below if you agreed with this shopping list, and if there's anything that you think that I forgot, and if I did, what it is you would add to this list and why. As always, thank you so much for watching and for joining me every week on these art videos, and I will see you next time.